Do you struggle in live poker games at your local casino? By the end of this video, you're going to know how to start confidently beating these games even if you are a total beginner. You're going to know what hands to play. You're going to know when to bet, when to raise them. You're going to know which players to target. You're going to know which players to stay away from. Bottom line, if you are struggling in your $1, $2 games, $2, $5 games, or small stakes tournaments in your local casino, I made this video for you. Here are my top 7 tips to get you crushing. All right, guys, counting down from 7 to 1. Number 7 is to play the right hands. So guys, before I get into any of the strategy for live poker games, the first thing you need to know is what hands to play. The number 1 reason why people lose in live poker games is they play too many trashy hands. So first things first, cut that out of your game. Only play these hands. So starting with strong aces, this is going to be ace king, ace queen, ace jack, and ace 10. I would also recommend playing broadways, so that's any 2 cards which are 10 and above. Examples include king queen, king jack, queen jack, and queen 10. Now you also want to play all pocket pairs, that is any 2 cards of the same rank, so pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, all the way down to pocket 2s. These are actually going to be some of your biggest winning hands in live poker, and I'm actually going to show you how to play pocket 6s in particular later on in the video, and pocket aces as well, so that you know exactly how to play these hands better. The next category of hands that you always want to play in live poker games are suited connectors. So these are any 2 cards which are right beside each other, like a 9-8 or a 7-6, and they must be of the same suit. So for example, the 9-8 of hearts or the 7-6 of spades. And finally, I would recommend playing all suited aces, so that is an ace and any other card which are of the same suit. So for example, ace of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, ace of clubs, and 3 of clubs. And beyond this, you want to fold everything else. Now, a lot of people say, Nathan, whoa, hang on, this is way too tight. How can I only stick to playing these hands? But guys, I'm assuming you clicked on this video because you want to start winning in live poker games. I know this is a little boring at first. You're going to be folding a lot before the flop, but this is going to get you showing a profit in your small stakes live poker games or even mid stakes live poker games, because you're going to have a strong mathematical advantage every single time you enter a hand, and this is simply going to lead to more profit in your pocket at the end of the day, as we're going to talk about in just a second. All right, guys, so let's get into the actual strategy now. So tip number 6 is to always isolate the weak players. So guys, it's a not so well kept secret that live poker players tend to be a little bit weaker than online players. Yes, it's true, online players tend to be a little bit stronger. Live poker games tend to attract more tourists, more people that are maybe just having a couple beers, having a good time. Basically the non-serious types of players. So you're going to see a lot of limping in live poker games, whether you play a $1, $2 game, a $2, $5 game, or a $20, $50 buy-in tournament. And what I mean by limping is that they just call the blind before the flop. So once again, using the example of a $1, $2 live game, the small blind is $1, the big blind is $2. If you see somebody just call the $2, that is a clear sign of a weak player, and I pounce on these people in live poker games. So for example, you've got the king jack offsuit. We already talked about that's a hand we're going to play. So the king of hearts and the jack of spades. When I see one person limp here calling the $2, I am going to raise them up to a bare minimum of $10 in this situation. And guys, I want to be clear, if I'm playing in an extra loose, low stakes live poker game, as they tend to be a lot of the time, if I'm getting 3, 4 callers every single time I make it $10 here, I'm going to try making it $15. I'm going to try making it $20. Bottom line, I'm going to make it whatever amount is necessary in order to ideally get me 1 caller. Guys, this in a nutshell has been my biggest profit source in recent years in live poker games. You absolutely want to raise the heck out of these players. And now let's go talk about what to do when they call you. All right, guys, so sometimes when you isolate the weaker players pre-flop, they are going to call you. That's just a fact of life. So let me give you another simple rule here, and that is if they check, you bet. Really simple rule that's going to make you a boatload of money in live poker games, and let's give you an example right now. So same hand here, we've got the King of Hearts and the Jack of Spades. We're going to assume we've raised it up pre-flop, they've called. So the flop comes down with the 10 of Hearts, 7 of Spades, and 4 of Diamonds. So you don't need to know a whole lot about poker to understand that we don't have anything on this flop here. We have King High. We technically have a backdoor straight draw. If it came, for example, on the turn and river with an ace and a queen, we would make the 10 Jack Queen King Ace straight. But this is a little bit of wishful thinking, guys. We could, of course, also catch a king or a jack. We've got 2 strong overcards, but there are only 3 remaining kings in the deck and another 3 remaining jacks for a total of 6 outs. So our odds are not amazing here. However, assuming the pot is $20 and they check to you, you should bet $12 here every single time. And let me unpack this now for you. So first things first, guys, we need to understand that even though we have missed the flop, they are going to miss the flop as well, statistically 2 out of 3 times, and therefore we're going to show an easy profit here because we know if we just stick a bet in their face, they're going to fold their hand a majority of the time. They don't have anything either. They've got a hand like ace 3. They've got a hand like queen jack. They got a hand like 5 deuce. Live players will call with that hand. We're actually going to talk about that coming up in just a moment here. Bottom line, guys, most of the time they don't have anything here either, so if you just bet, they're going to fold. The other really important point here that I hope some of you savvy live poker players already noticed is that we're only betting a little over 50% of the pot. You could even make it $10 here, and there is a specific reason why I do this. When we're only betting 50 or 60% of the pot, we are giving ourselves an excellent price to make them just go away. We don't need to be math geniuses to understand that when we only bet a small amount like this, and we know that they don't have anything most of the time, this is just going to be money in our pocket. All right, guys, let's move on to tip number 4, and let's talk about the situation now where they call us on the flop, because of course that's going to happen sometimes as well. So guys, my policy on the turn, which is the 4th card in the middle now, is to make them a believer. Let's talk about this. So you got called on the flop. Once again, we've got the King of Hearts and Jack of Spades, and by the turn, the board reads the 10, 7, 4 ace, and that is a rainbow board, meaning that there are 4 different suits on the board, so there is no possible chance of a flush. Remember, a flush in poker is 5 cards all of the same suit. It is now absolutely impossible for anybody to have a flush draw on this board. So the pot is now $44. It was $20 on the flop. We bet $12. They called, so now there is $44. So what should you do in this situation? Well, guys, I'm going to tell you, when that ace of clubs drops on the turn here, I'm going to be betting $33 into the $44 pot here. People are going to ask, Nathan, why $33? What is the magical amount here? Well, $33 is 75% of the pot here, and I typically choose that number because it draws a line in the sand. It puts the hammer down and says, hey, look, I am very serious about this pot. You need to fold your hand right now. This is going to get very, very expensive for you. Just go away. And luckily, most of the time they do. Now let's talk about why we're betting specifically on this card, the ace of clubs. The reason why we're betting on this card, guys, is because it is the perfect scare card to make them fold a lot of their lower pairs. For example, if they've got a hand like 8-7 that they called with on the flop, they had middle pair on the flop, they're already concerned that we might have a 10, and now when the ace comes on the turn, they're going to be doubly concerned when we continue betting. The temperature's starting to rise in the kitchen. They're not feeling so good about their 8-7 at this point, and they're very likely to throw their hand away here if we can make another strong bet. By the way, I have multiple videos in my Elite Poker Training University showing you exactly how I bluff them out of the pot like this on the turn and river. This is in addition to 17 hours of advanced poker training, all taught by myself, 50 plus videos, downloadable cheat sheets below every single video. I have just opened up enrollment. I will leave a link in the description below if you want to enroll. But let's move on to live poker tip number 3 now, and that is to check raise your monsters. Alright guys, so I promised off the top that I was going to give you a robust strategy for pocket sixes so you understand how to play your pocket pairs better. So guys, bottom line, I have made a career out of what I'm going to show you right now, and that is by check raising your sets. Okay, so first things first, a set in poker is when you hit 3 of a kind on the flop, but this is not to be confused with trips. Trips is a different hand. That's, for example, when you have a hand like 8-7 and the flop comes a 7-7 ace. That is called trips, and it's a lot easier for people to see. There's 2 7s on the flop, but what we're talking about here in this example is called a set. It is a much more powerful hand because your 3 of a kind is much more hidden, and if they have a hand like top pair with the ace king, we are literally 98% to win in this pot. That is as close as you can get to being a lock to win in the game of Texas Hold'em. So let me break this down for you. If you hit a set out of position, that's what OOP means. So say for example, they raised pre-flop and you're in the blinds and you call with pocket sixes. You always want to be check raising, and the reason why is because this traps the maximum amount of money in the middle when again you are 98% to win even if they have top pair. And this is the strategy that I have literally been using now for decades in low stakes live poker games to get all of their chips. So when you have pocket sixes and the flop comes with the king 6-3, you should check, and then when they make a bet, you want to raise 4 times that amount. So say the pot is $20, they bet $10, I'm going to make it $40. Guys, the beauty about live poker games is that they are full of a lot of weaker players, as we talked about before, a lot of weekend warriors, tourists, people just splashing around playing for fun. If they have a hand like top pair, they're not folding, so use this strategy against them to make sure that you get the maximum payoff when you hit a monster hand like a set. Alright guys, so moving on to tip number 2, and that is once again the not so well kept secret that live poker players don't play so good. Guys, if you played a lot of online poker like I have, once you step into a live poker game, you're going to see, let's just say, a lowering of overall skill level. We already talked about how there's a lot of recreational players in these games. They just play for fun. They're tourists. They're in there having a few drinks. This is their form of recreation. So translation, you need to understand that they're going to get lucky against you sometimes. This is simply an inevitable outcome when players are playing a ton of hands. They're chasing every draw, every bottom pair, middle pair, whatever, and so on. And I'm going to give you an example right now. So you have pocket aces, the best hand ever created in Texas Hold'em. We've got the ace of hearts and the ace of diamonds, and the flop comes down with the 5 of spades, 7 of clubs, and 2 of hearts. So totally harmless board. There's nothing going on in this situation. I would 1000% recommend simply making a strong bet here every single time, so you bet, they call. Turn comes down with the jack of hearts. Once again, guys, totally harmless card. There's no reason why this should have hit their range. It doesn't complete any draws. There's not really any draws on this board to begin with, so we simply go ahead and make the most obvious play. Once again, we make a strong bet and they call. So what kind of hand are we actually putting them on at this point? Well, once again, guys, if I'm just up against a standard player in a live poker game, I'm putting them on anything from king deuce for bottom pair to a hand like 8-7 for top pair. Maybe they've got 5-4 for middle pair. Maybe they even just called on the flop with queen jack and they hit the jack on the turn. They could have a hand like pocket 8s, pocket 9s. Bottom line, I expect to be still ahead here with my pocket aces the vast overwhelming majority of the time. So I'm not at all concerned when the river comes down with the 3 of clubs, but they lead into us. What on earth is going on here? Well, guys, I've seen this donk lead play enough times to know that they're going to do it sometimes with king 7 or something goofy like pocket 4s for no reason at all. So I am going to make the call here, but sometimes they are simply going to turn over a hand like 5-3. Yes, they called the entire way with middle pair and they spiked their 2 pair on the river. Guys, this right here is the hardest thing about poker. Playing your hand in the absolute correct way, getting them to make mistakes at every single stage of the hand, and yet they get rewarded in the end. This goes against all of human psychology, everything we know, and this is the kind of thing that puts people on tilt. It makes them frustrated. So guys, my number 2 tip for live poker games is you absolutely need to make peace with this. This kind of thing is going to happen again and again, but you need to understand that when the math is heavily on your side, as it was throughout this entire hand, you are simply going to win boatloads of money in the long run. And that leads me into tip number 1 for live poker games, and that is to avoid games that are full of sharks. All right, guys, so this might be a little bit counterintuitive, but you actually want to play in live poker games that are full of bad players. And the reason why, guys, is because despite popular opinion, we don't actually make money versus good players. We don't make money against players who make a disciplined fold with their 5-3 before the flop, or they just fold on the flop. No, we make money against players who continue to call with these hands and chase long shot odds. We know that they're going to get lucky 10% of the time, 15% of the time, but that still means that 90% or 85% of the time they're not going to get lucky, and we're going to end up winning a big pot with our pocket aces. So guys, you want these players in your games calling you down with trashy hands. These are the players who we profit against in the long run, the players who make the large fundamental mistakes. Do not get this twisted. If you find that your live poker game is full of tough pros, maybe it's some sort of YouTube meetup game, I would recommend leaving that game immediately. It's not going to be so profitable for you. All right, guys, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. And if you want to know my complete strategy to smash low stakes live poker games, mid stakes as well, make sure you grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheet. That'll be the top link in the description below. All right, guys, all the best in your live poker games. I will catch you next time.